Hey guys, this is the Crisp Podcast, Episode 1. I am Matthew Faronbi, and I'm here with my dad,
Sunday Faronbi.
And we have a special guest. Guest, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Paul Faronbi.
Guest, go ahead and tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
I'm leadership and personal growth speaker. I also have a podcast as well. I've been doing that for a couple of years now. I work full-time as a manufacturing engineer. Been doing that over 6 years now, but really my passion has been leadership and personal growth, specifically in the STEM field, because all the stuff I've done as a chemical engineer and done with different national organizations has led me to that.
So, Dad, if you want to go about a little bit about what you do, your background, and all that stuff.
Well, just literally, I'm a coach and a speaker and the author of the book, Nothing Higher, Why You Need to Descend in Order to Soar. And I get the privilege of speaking at conferences, doing seminars and workshops for project managers, STEM professionals, because that was my background for more than 27 years as an engineer and a project manager.
Cool. Yeah, and then you guys know I'm Matthew. I work currently as an electrical engineer. I also do freelance videography, photography, video editing, anything creative I like to dip my foot into. So yeah, let's dive deep into where we're from. Does anyone want to start that off? Dad, since
I think you should start.
I mean, you birthed us, so you might as well just
Well, he did it. Mom did.
Well, he helped create. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
You guys are funny. In case you guys are not getting this yet, the two of them are brothers, so that's why you're getting the back and forth between them. Well,
did you even say your last name? Maybe
I
they
did
didn't
at
know.
the beginning.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, continue.
Well, what was it? 24 years ago. Yeah, I grew up in Nigeria. I was born and bred in Nigeria. I lived the first 30 years of my life as an engineer. The first 8-9 years of my career as an engineer was in Nigeria, and before we moved over here to the United States.
So you lived next to elephants and
they were
lions, right?
Roaming the streets, and you pat them on the back when you are going to work, and you feed them carrots when you are coming back from work.
I know elephants eat carrots.
Elephants don't eat carrots.
I didn't know that.
I
I
don't
don't
know
eat
what they
peanuts.
I don't know what they eat. I don't know what they eat. I just made that up. In case you are thinking that's actually true, that is not true. But when we came here 24 years ago, and I remember both of you were 4 and 2 years old.
I was 4.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the other one was 2.
Yeah, I was too.
And we are talking about respect today, especially in terms of cultural differences, and there's a lot, especially coming from the culture that I grew up in. There's a lot about respect and what it looks like. And one of the things I found out is that respect is different depending on the cultures most of the time. So we'll delve more into that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that transition from getting first to the States to like maybe the first few years of like where we ended up, what you started doing, and things like that.
Well, when we got here, actually, I had a job waiting for me. I worked for... I'm supposed to say that? I guess I can.
I mean, it's up to you. You can say you work for a company, or you can say you work...
Well, I work for Siemens. Siemens, the big German company. My job with Siemens was waiting for me before we got here. So that was why we actually ended up in St. Louis, because they told me before I left Nigeria that you will be based in St. Louis. So that's the reason why we ended up in St. Louis. And I was there for 11 years before we moved and transitioned to Omaha because I got a new job. And those jobs took me around the world, literally traveling around and doing a lot of projects, leading teams around the world. Yeah.
So, Paul.
Yes.
Talk about your experiences.
Did you even remember anything from Nigeria?
Honestly, it's like when you're a kid, there's like just glimpses of stuff you remember. So for me, I just remember some moments like when we're in a market and just holding on to mom or with Matthew. Or just sometimes, like, I remember we had like a green couch, a blue chair, some random stuff I remember, but not a lot of concrete stuff, like while we're in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember nothing.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
were.
think my brain was even formed yet.
But it's still developing technically.
Yeah. Well, you were 2 years old. You're not
Okay.
expected to know anything.
Your long-term memory wasn't fully developed.
Yeah.
So let's kind of jump forward a little bit to when you first, because like you said, we're talking a little bit about respect and how it differs between cultures, and then how that affected our experiences and things like that. So when was the first time you noticed the differentiation between respect here and back in Nigeria?
Well, first of all, in the Yoruba culture, and for some kind of context, for some background, Nigeria is a very big, complex country. We have more than 200 different ethnic groups that speaks more than 500 different languages. And I'm talking languages, not dialect. Many of those languages have, several dialects within them. And the Yoruba culture, we are Yorubas, the Yoruba culture in which I grew up in actually elevates respect much more than most other Nigerian cultures. Even as you guys know, your mom and I, we are from different tribes. She's Igbo, I'm Yoruba, and I think even in the Yoruba culture, sometimes we refer to the Igbos as people without respect. Sometimes because of differences. For example, in the Yoruba culture, we don't call even our older siblings by their first names. You guys know my older brother, Kenny's dad, and I've never called him by his first name because that is a sign of disrespect. You don't.
Yeah, Paul.
You don't call your older sibling, even if it's just one year or 2 years older. I have even cousins who are just 1 year or younger than me, and they don't call me by my first name. That's ingrained in you from when you are little. Much more ingrained in you, and flowing into that, we also have the corporate culture in Nigeria is British because we were colonized by the British.
Like half the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you also get the British. I don't know whether you call it the class system. You see a little bit of that even in our corporate culture. So, for example, in the workplaces, you rarely call your boss by his first name or her first name. You call them Mr. So and so. No, Mr. their last name. And going back to your question, that was the first difference I noticed when I came here. I remember my first manager in St. Louis at the time. His name was Marcus Chowder. He's Austrian. He was Austrian. He's passed away now. And I remember the first time I met him and I referred to him as Mr. Chowder. And he just stopped me right there. He said, "Sonny, don't call me Mr. Chowder. My name is Marcus." I said, "But you are my boss." He said, "But no, call me Marcus." So for me, that was my first experience in seeing differences in cultures. But there are instances where even when people have told me that, now fast forward, this may be about 8 or 9 years later, I was leading a big project for Siemens. And one of the senior directors that I was dealing with, who is German, also based in Germany, his name was Thomas. And he's much older than me also. And maybe because of the Yoruba culture in me, apart from the fact that is higher than me in organizational hierarchy, is also much older. So I called him Mr. I even forgot his last name now, Mr. So and so. And he told me the same thing. He said, "Sonny, don't call me, just call me Thomas." And I looked him in the eye because we were friendly. I said, "No, I will not call you Thomas." I actually said that to him. And I explained to him. I said, "In my culture, you are older than me, apart from the fact that you are above me in terms of the organization. You are also older than me, and that's my way of showing you respect. That's my way of showing you respect." And he accepted my explanation, and we move on from there. So anyway, those are a couple of instances of those kind of slight culture changes when I first got here.
Okay. Yeah, also going back, you said the differences between the Yoruba and Igbo culture. Is there any other things besides just you can think of besides just maybe calling your older sibling, not calling them by the first name or anything else? I just kind of want to set the background for the differences there and then kind of move on.
Well, now I would say this, even in the Igbo culture, I think if the gap in siblings is high enough, if it's several years, occasionally you also see that. Mm-hmm. But in the Yoruba culture, usually it doesn't matter. But the funny thing is this: there are times when you don't actually see that even in the Yoruba culture. For example, your uncle Pastor Dari, that he's a year and a half older than me, but I've always called him by his first name when we were growing up. We were so close, and I think I just called him by his first name. They never corrected me, and that's the thing. Usually, you have someone who will correct you as a child and say, you cannot do that. You cannot call that person by name. So you learn from there. But for him, because we are so close in age, we grew up together. Our oldest brother, Kenny's dad, was already out of high school by the time we were going to elementary school. So it was just me and him. And nobody corrected me when I would call him by his first name. So we actually grew up. So that's one of the only exception I've seen calling him. I grew up calling him by his first name. But here's another thing though. When it comes to that, as we grow older, the respect it's much more pronounced. So it doesn't even matter whether you are older or younger. For example, my oldest brother, once again Kenny's dad, doesn't call me by my first name now. Usually, when you are older, the respect flows both ways. And usually, when you are married, you have children, and I think it's also a Yoruba thing. We start calling people by the names of their children. Usually the names of their first child, once you have that first child. So that's why usually these days, you hear them call me Daddy Ibukun or Baba Ibukun or something like that. That's usually what they will call me. And we started calling him that also. So that's, Pastor Dari, you call him Daddy Michael. Most people call him because his first son is Michael. So that kind of happens also. So even as people grow older, you see that the level of respect, it flows both ways. It doesn't have to be you are younger, you are older. It's just that mutual respect or mutual regard for someone. Mm-hmm. And you see that a lot.
Okay. Yeah, and then Paul, going back to you, since you are the oldest, I just wanted to know if there's anything.
Aren't you supposed to be calling him Brother Paul now?
No, I don't think I'm going to do that. We're in America now. Rules change. But I just wanted to know
if because he wasn't corrected when he was younger.
That's true.
So it goes back to you.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, we'll probably come back to this, if there was anything you noticed initially, early on growing up, of that respect culture in our household early on, as in that kind of like trickle down effect, or things you noticed like dealing with other siblings or other people in regards to kind of respect.
Well, I like to say on record that all my siblings are very respectful towards me most of the time, but it goes both ways.
Yeah.
I would say that not necessarily initially, because like when you're at home, there's really nothing to compare it to. Yeah. It's more so when we interact with friends or I went to school that I noticed differences. I'm trying to think. I probably think the first thing I noticed was that everyone that wasn't mom or dad, that was someone that was older than us, was like uncle or auntie, even if they were not related to us. And actually, I think we talked about it a few times that we were confused about who was actually related to us. And we had to, like, someone would come and be like, oh, it's uncle this, auntie this coming. And then later we're like, wait, are they related to us or not? But like it's just one of those things.
Or
Just,
they could even be like a cousin. Though.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
older.
Your cousin.
So they're related to us, but it's still older, so we'd call them uncle. Or
Yeah,
auntie or
yeah,
something.
exactly. So it's just one of those things that, like, from what Dad was saying, that we're just not using someone's name is a sign of respect. So using that term with endearment, whether it's uncle, auntie, brother, sister, cousin, whatever it is, instead of saying their name.
Mm-hmm. And I also noticed that like we never had that, like you were saying, of I called you by your first name. My little brother calls me by my first name. Yeah. So that was the difference. Moving here and adjusting here, it's like we still had that that respect for each other, but it was still a little bit different in how we related to each other for sure. So
yeah, definitely. And I wanted to say something quickly about what Paul said moments ago about calling people uncle and auntie, and that's actually that's something that is very, very common in the Nigerian culture in general. Whether it doesn't matter which tribe, it's very common. Someone that is older than you is an uncle or an auntie. If they are close enough, you actually call them mom and dad, for example. If they are close enough. So, for example, my actual uncle, you guys know your auntie in Ireland, her dad and my dad are brothers, and were brothers. They are both passed now. And so her dad is my uncle, but we never call him uncle. It's always dad. Well, somebody is that close. So usually your parents' siblings, usually they are extra mom and dad. So uncle and auntie are actually for people like you described. They're for people who are really not related to you most of the time, but that you want to give that respect, that regard to, and that's why it's just that. I have people over this last summer, few men around the country, most of them Nigerians, that we're in the Bible study group together, and they call me Uncle Sonny. These are grown men, but because I'm older than them, but I'm not related to them, that's what they do, because usually you don't call people by their first names, even if they're not related to you.
Yeah. And then I also wanted to jump to the experiences you've had with us and our friends, because I know you've talked about this before.
I think I know where you're going with this one.
So how was that experiences with relating to, as we got older and had friends come around? The differences that between disrespect and what you've noticed, and how you kind of adjusted with that.
Well, and I don't know if some people who have attended my signature course on emotional intelligence, if they are listening to this, because I always share that story when at the beginning of that course. I shared the story about when we first got here, and the two of you will go outside and play with kids outside, and then a few weeks later, those kids will follow you back to our home, our apartment at the time, follow you back. And I will tell you, I remember when the very first time they came, they followed you home, and those kids just walked into the apartment, look at you. Your mom and I were just sitting on the couch. They look at us, eyeball to eyeball, just walk by, and we were mad. We were very angry. And why were we angry? The funny thing was that it's just the fact that they did not acknowledge you. They didn't say hi. Simply that. Now, that may not seem like a huge deal, but also in most Nigerian cultures, acknowledging people, especially people older than you, is a sign of respect. Mm-hmm. So when you don't, you are disrespecting them. And it was funny that we didn't think, it's not something that you are consciously aware of, but you just say it and you just don't like it, you get angry or something like that.
It's like something you don't notice until it doesn't happen that you realize.
Exactly. And I remember, you guys may not remember this, but I remember
this.
After those your friends left,
So them not to come back.
Your mom and I, we sat the two of you down. Remember, they were 4 and 2 years old. We sat them down and said, your friends come here. They come here, they walked into the place, like they own the place, they didn't say hi. You better tell them that we greet people here. And the next time they come, if they don't say hi, we kick them out because they are bad kids. They are disrespectful kids.
I remember that. And I told all my friends that.
Yeah, we know that you guys did because I began to notice something curious. Anytime those kids will come, you see them acting very uncomfortably. They are, kind of being sheepish, and they are coming to you.
It's not something they're used to. So.
Yeah, exactly. They're coming
Especially
to
when
you.
you're like younger. As you're older,
To say hi. So we know that you got the message to them. But
because we wanted friends.
But here's the thing, and this is the end of the part of the story when I share in the course, in the emotional intelligence course, is that fast forward a few months as we got to know those kids better, as we got to know their parents better, we realized that they are not bad kids, they are not disrespectful children.
Most of them.
But yeah, most of them. But when their initial behaviors did not align with what we thought respect looked like, we tend to label them as disrespectful. Mm-hmm. And that's the funny thing. And I still remember your friend that you went to high school with. What's his name?
Cody,
yes. I remember, and this was even high school. This was somebody you knew in high school. So he also knew, you must have told him, because I think you were still in college then, or maybe you have even graduated from college. Your mom ran into Cody at Costco, where he works, and it was several years ago. And he told your mom, he said, I remember those days when I'll be coming to your house, and Paul kept on reminding me, make sure you say hi to my mom, make sure you say hi to my dad when you come. And we laugh about it now.
So before we get too far into more respect stuff, I wanted to come back to Paul, and then we can kind of bounce off each other of like back in those days when we'd bring friends over, anything else that we'd like noticed, or because I know we also had that too of like constantly reminding our friends, like going up to the door, like, hey, just a reminder, you have to say hey, say how's it going.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that a couple of our friends would act like it was their house. They just go and open our fridge, which was a huge no. We never. I mean, I still struggle with opening other people's fridges.
Yeah,
like even when they tell me to, I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Can you go get that for me? Like, rather if you get it than I open your fridge. So I think that's a big one, as well as. Yeah, that's what's coming to mind right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also how we related to those same friends going to their house too, because we definitely had more of a conscious reminder to like either say hi to their parents or make sure we were going out of our way to like greet them or things.
That's
like
actually
that.
a good point that I think I need to find out. I need to ask you guys, because I don't think your mom and I ever actually asked, because I know that we always remind you, because when we see your friends come in and we notice those instances that we thought was disrespectful, I know usually we turn it around and said, when you go to their homes, make sure you say hi to their parents, make sure you are respectful. So I don't think we ever got feedback on how that played out when you went to their homes, and what it looks like to you. How did you perceive it, if you can remember?
There's no news is good news for you. It means we're doing our job.
Not necessarily.
Well, yeah, in this case, yes.
Oh, you're taking the fifth on that one.
I also remember this sometimes because I think, like you said, American culture is different. So sometimes if we come over to someone's house, their parents we might not even see them initially, because we'll just be like,
or their parents are like out of the way.
Yeah, they'll definitely more be out of the way because, like, oh yeah, they're my kids' friends. They're just coming to hang out with my kids.
Yeah, like I never met Josh's parents. Like ever.
Yeah.
I think I met his parents like one time.
Oh yeah, we had been to his house like probably half a dozen times.
Yeah,
before
we'd go, yeah.
Because we'd go in and then like go to his room.
Yeah,
and then
we'd just hang
sometimes
out
his
there.
mom would yell at him to like do something, and he'd be like, "Okay, I'll be right back."
Yeah, when he was hiding them. For a while, I was like, "Do you have parents?"
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, because he would always like ride his bike to our place, and then finally we were like, "Where do you live? So we can come to your place." Yeah.
Like I said, I think culture is just different in the sense that I think you guys, for the most part, try to be there to at least just say hi or get to know them initially, whereas American parents, sometimes, I don't want to generalize it, if they're,
You can generalize it.
I think for
It's
the
just a culture thing.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
a lot of times, at least back then, the experience we had was they'd more stay out of the way just because
Yeah.
they were like, "Hey, these are my kids."
Well,
friends," like I
Nigerians,
said.
we don't do that. No, it's true. We do not do that.
Yeah.
If our kids are hanging out with some people, we want to know who those people are. We want to know if they are people we need to keep you away from, or with people that you would think we should be hanging around. So definitely, we try as much as possible to, because once again, you look at it in those formative years. There's a lot that is going on, that is shaping the lives of people who are growing up. The funny thing is this: if you are growing up in Nigeria of today, it probably has changed. I think it has changed a lot from when your mom and I were growing up, because you've heard the term, it takes a village, right? It takes a village. Your parents may not be there, but guess what? Neighbors would discipline you. It's true. We were talking about another example, talking about greeting people when you come into the house as a child. Is another example is this. Imagine me as a little boy on the streets of Lagos, and I run into a neighbor. Somebody who's a neighbor, maybe they live across or adjacent to our house, and they are friends with my parents. I'm friends with their kids. We know each other very well. But I meet them on a street far away from our street somewhere. So they know me, I know them. If I don't stop to greet them, I may get slapped right there. Yeah, I may get slapped or get a knock on the head for not saying hi to them. And guess what? You dare not cry home to your parents and say, somebody beat me because I didn't say hi to them. You get more beating when you get home because, something like that. So in that sense, it takes a
Call
village.
CPS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes, well, we don't have CPS.
Well, this is also in the 60s and 70s in Nigeria.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah.
exactly. So it took a village then. Now, I think the Nigerian culture of today actually is much more, very similar.
Westernized.
Very, very similar to actually what we have here, because people now live a lot. That must be my generation. They live in apartments or homes that is kind of separated. Look at even an apartment here. You can live here without knowing your neighbors, for example.
That's the way I like it.
Yeah. But in those days, the homes we grew in were actually communal, kind of. I don't know if you guys have seen, maybe not you guys have seen those kind of homes. You have a hallway in the middle of the house, and you have on either side rooms that are rented by different people. And everyone has a common kitchen, usually in the back of the house, a common bathroom, and
So it's like a dorm. Basically.
yeah, people do things together. So you're always interacting with your neighbors. So everybody is into everybody's business, kind of. And so somebody misbehaves, an older person will discipline that person, right there. So it's different. It's definitely different now.
Yeah, and when you said that, I kind of noticed another difference between cultures in that if you, like you said, you'd run into someone or someone you kind of knew on the street, and they noticed you, if either you didn't greet or if they noticed you maybe misbehaving, you definitely get like,
oh yeah,
but I kind of like bring your perspective to like here. Like if someone they'd probably just mind their own business. If they knew you well enough, they'd probably come up to you and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" But more so here, I feel like they'd be like, "Oh, that's so and so's kid. I'm just gonna be maybe."
yeah.
And a lot of times, what I've seen is that when people do say something about someone's kid, what they're doing, they get upset that you even talked to them or even told them that your kid is. They're like, my kid doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I think
Yeah,
that's a difference. That it's not the same way that the village is raising a child. It's like the parent wants to be the one to raise them, despite the fact a lot of times they spend majority of their time in school or daycare and they're not
away
with their
from them.
parents.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And you see, because of what you said, if you just look at the amount of time in a day that the parents actually spend with the kids, it's very small.
Yeah.
It's very small. Maybe 1 or 2 hours in the morning, and then maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours in the evening. That's it. Majority of the time outside of that they are not spending sleeping, they are spending somewhere else with friends, with teachers, and things like that. And those people tend to actually know the kids more, know people more.
And that's why there were definitely some kids who were like, their parents think they're like the best kids ever, and then you get alone with them or with their parents and out there like, these are probably some of the worst kids I've ever seen.
Yeah, that everyone knows except the parents.
Yeah. And that's like kind of what you said of like, if someone like noticed it or tried to bring it up to their parents, they're like, oh no, why would you even bring that up about my
It's
kid?
like, Johnny's good.
Exactly.
Well, that's one of the funny things, and I don't know if I think that either that's a generational difference from one generation to the next, or it's a cultural difference. I don't know which one it is, but I'm thinking then. No, just thinking now. I'm thinking then when I was a child. Most of the time, if somebody goes to tell my parents that I misbehave, they won't believe me. They believe them. And if I say I didn't misbehave, they will tend to, because of whatever. Maybe it's just a generational thing. But you were talking about now, people will tend to take the side of their kids.
Not even now, even before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as I'm thinking about this out aloud, I'm thinking it may just be the fact that those parents are actually kind of defending themselves, because it's when you say your child is
It's a
misbehaving,
reflection on them.
exactly,
Yeah.
it's an assessment of their parenting style. It's an assessment of how well they are doing as parents. So I have a feeling that's actually what they are trying to defend, or what they are trying to protect by saying, no, my child did not do that. So
Yeah, which what they don't realize is that there's some people, like, no matter what you do, that it's not always on the parent. There's people who have different things they're predisposed to. They can only tell someone to do something so much.
Yeah.
But once they get to a point when they can do something on their own and they just choose not to do it.
whatever.
Because-
Yeah.
Like right now that you guys don't listen to me anymore, right?
We don't need to.
Who are you?
What's your name again?
So, but that's the thing. That's the thing about no, people have different personalities. It doesn't matter. Yes, our environment shapes people, and that's one of the things with parents. Parents will say, "Okay, these are the ways I raise my children. I expect them to behave this way." What many of us, or most parents, tend to forget is that yes, we may have taught values and raised our children in a particular way, but then you have to find the intermix of the way they are raised with how their personality has received that. And that's why you find kids who grew up in the same home, who are raised the same way, can have divergent views on something or behave differently, because their training, their upbringing may have been the same, but when you mix that with their own individual bent and personalities, it produces different variations of things, and that's what you see. And it's unique that way, and I believe God did not create us to be robots. That makes us unique in our own ways, and you have different personalities and different peoples around the world.
Yeah. And then I guess kind of to close it out, I just wanted to talk about how all that experience affects our lives now, maybe in our day-to-day, how we interact with people or how we interact with each other. If you guys have any perspectives on that to start off.
Actually, I think maybe both of you may actually have a better perspective on that than I would, because as someone who, or as people who are raised in this culture, but also you are raised in this culture, but you have parents who kind of brought you up with the mindset of a different culture, kind of. So there's an intermix of that culture. So how do you guys think that has shaped the way you interact with people, the way you engage with people, compared to maybe your peers, your friends?
I would say at least initially going into the workplace, I think you kind of mentioned of calling your boss by their first name. I think consciously I have to like sometimes tell myself to call them by their first name because we grew up in a household that like anyone older than you or anyone in a position of authority, you'd call them Mr. their last name or even Mr. their first name. So even sometimes now when I'm interacting with people, I still think of that even as I'm saying their first name. I'll be like, oh, hey, John, can you help me out with this? But it's something that is still ingrained in a sense. But realizing it's just a different culture, so it's not disrespectful to say that. So.
Yeah, I think for me it's a little different because I did a lot of undergraduate research and I still do a lot of work with people in academia, and I think respect and the hierarchy is still it's still really rampant in academia. So like calling someone that is a professor or doctor, just calling them by their first name, that's not something you do. And you can even see the look on someone's face when you say their name, but they're saying like, I'm professor this or doctor this. I think more so with the students and students versus professors. Like for me, that's a professional. They don't really see it as much, but I do see a difference when I call them doctor this. They can see that I'm respecting them because of what they achieve, what they've accomplished. Versus like when I'm in the normal manufacturing field, I don't necessarily do that. Like I learned that from like even internships. Like I had a boss named Paul, and I think I called him Mr. Kerr, and he's like, "Don't call me Mr. Kerr. Like you're making me feel older than I am."
That's my dad. That's not me.
It was like, and even like I've had situations now, like because I work with different college students all the time, and they'll call me Mr. Faronbi, and I'm like, who is that? I'm like looking around and like, that's not me. So I can understand why people don't want to be called like Mr. or Mrs. They prefer to be called their name, but I think it's different when someone has a title or something they've achieved. But at the same time, I think it just depends on not necessarily your maturity level, but how comfortable you are with who you
with them.
Even with your I think it has something to do with you, how comfortable you are with your title itself, because there's been people that I call them doctor or something, I'd be like, just call me by my first name. It's like I got that like 20, 30 years ago. I mean it's where it helped me get to where I am now, but that's not who I see myself as. Like I'm this person, not a person with a PhD in this.
Yeah, well, the thing though with that, that's very true. I definitely agree with that. The one thing also that came to mind as you were speaking about that is that it seems to me, and I've had the opportunity to travel around the world and to work with people across different cultures. I think what we are talking about seems to be an American thing. It seems to be an American thing. Most other cultures, it seems to me, and I may be completely wrong on this, most other cultures seem to respect that kind of hierarchy that we're talking about much more than American cultures. Because if you go to Europe, in England, for example, or even Germany, you hear people call people Mr. Something, Mr. So and so. And to many of the Asian cultures, I think Asian cultures are much more, they tend to be very similar to African cultures when it comes to respect and things like that. And then that actually brings the responsibility home for us on how we show respect to other people. So even if I'm American, and everybody goes by first name and things like that, what's my responsibility in making sure I'm aware of what respect look like in other cultures, especially if I'm going to those cultures? And Americans, we love to travel, right? We love to travel. We love to go and travel around the world. But do you want to go into somebody's culture and behave in ways that they may seem or they may deem disrespectful to them, or do we think, oh, they will understand that I'm American, so no.
Yeah, I definitely see that even with my limited international travel is that I think Americans have a tendency to think that the rest of the world doesn't like them, but it's really what you're talking about is the respect they that what I've seen is that Americans come in and it's like for whatever reason, entertainment, a lot of stuff revolves around American culture, and even like with the language and things like that. So they're more they go into another country and expect people to cater to them, but really, like you said, like if you're going into another country, another culture, or even meeting someone that's different from you, the humility is showing meeting the person where they're at, as opposed to trying that person meet you where you're at, because. Because even just a couple months ago when I was in France and Germany and Italy, and I made the attempt to either speak the language or learn the language or like communicate the way they met. And then even when I made that initial attempt, they met me with saying like, "Do you speak English?" And they're trying to meet me where I was. So I think just overall trying to meet people where they're at instead of having people meet you where you're at, that is the whole idea of respect. And I think that's something that we've seen is that there's really no such thing as over respecting someone. And even if there is, they'll tell you right away, like they'll call me this. And it's more it's better to err on the side of caution than to disrespect someone.
It's better to err on the side of over respecting than well, I want to say under respecting, but it's kind of like being disrespectful because it will come across as disrespectful to them. And there are times people just don't know. There are people don't know, but I think, like you said, responsibility is on us to meet people where they are. Actually to try to make an effort to meet them where they are, to show them that respect instead of expecting them to meet us where we are. And I think that's the real, to me, that's a real definition of respect. Like I said, that's a respect. The way I define it in Nothing Higher is giving consideration to others, giving that consideration to others, not expecting them to meet me where I am, but trying to meet them where they are.
Yeah, and I think one of you guys mentioned it. This comes down to this being the aware of it. Because some people, you could be totally ignorant and just be deemed as disrespectful just because you don't know. So it is on you in a sense to find out, especially if you're going to a different country or interacting with different cultures.
If you're interacting with people from different cultures, so you may not even be going to a country, but if you know you're interacting with people from different cultures, that's why I have in my bookshelf, I'm sure you guys have seen the book, Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands. It's a reference book. It's a thick book, about maybe 2 or 3 inches thick. Kiss, bow, or shake hands. It's about how to behave in different cultures so that you do not come across as arrogant or being disrespectful. So something like that. And you're right. We all need to be aware of who I'm talking to, who I'm interacting with. Do they have beliefs or respect or things that's kind of different from what I think it is, and how can I meet them, or at least try and attempt to meet them where they are.
Okay. Yeah, I think we hit all the points we wanted to. Anything you guys want to bring up in closing? Any statements you want to put out into the world?
I think you should tell them where you can get your book, because you referenced it a few times. Nothing Higher.
Yeah, the book is available from Amazon, and you can also order it from my website, sonnyspeaks.com/nothinghigher. You can get it from there. You get a special discount. You still pay for shipping though, because we are not Amazon. We don't have one-day shipping. But you can also order it directly from Amazon, and from Amazon you can get in 4 different formats: paperback, hardback, audio, and Kindle, electronic version.
All right.
I think just like to mention, just to close it, is that not to be afraid to ask questions. A lot of times, I know I've been there, so people feel like they're asking a stupid question or a dumb question. But what they don't realize is that when you're asking questions, it shows that you're inquisitive, that you want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
You come off across a lot better asking
Yeah.
a question as opposed to just doing something and then trying to backtrack. Not to say you can't recover from it, but you're better off if you're not sure, or even if maybe you are sure, or maybe you just want to learn more, just ask the question and see what happens.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good. All right. Well, to close off, Paul, if you want to tell the people where to find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so as you can see from the hat, Incredipaul, so incredipaul.org, or on my socials, I am Incredipaul, so INCREDI Paul.org, or P, my last name, Faronbi, at incredipaul.org. If you search Incredipaul online, on podcasts, wherever, you'll probably see my face somewhere.
Well, guys, this has been Crisp, the podcast, episode 1. As always, you guys can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, basically wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later.
See you next time.
Peace out.